background noise. Thank you, finally. All right, who we got here? Chris Garwood, thank you, and Ramirez. Okay, Trish, Anita, Aiden, Counselor, and Mr. Guest, Mr. Schuyler. All right, there we go. Okay, so
Mr. Chairman, Amy Martin asked late yesterday to join the AAB, and the way I read the instructions indicated that you had to go through the clerk's office to get your name on the list. So I don't know if she did that or not to join the meeting today or not.
Would that be her watching from the council chamber's laptop by chance?
I really don't know.
No, that's the laptop that's recording for YouTube, but I just sent her an email invite because I had gotten in and just was getting ready for this meeting and didn't see that on our NC clerk's email, but she has just been invited, as has CAO Jason Burgess.
Okay. All right, that's cool. Now, is this, for the sake of that, is this going to be a permanent thing that Councillor Martin would like to join, or is this just because the timing and the nature?
I think she just wishes to see how the Ag Advisory Board works and get a better handle on the issues of the day.
Oh, great. Okay, well, we open arms welcome all of senior leadership on that, so that's great. All right, so missing so far is Mike Burkle. James Hill Mr. Hill did email me saying he could not attend, so he won't be today. Haven't heard anything back from John. Guard, Remy. So right now we're 3 members down, with the 4th that did give notification. So on that note, info pack. Okay, so I got the info pack. Beautiful. And Hayden, I have Tony's to send in, Anthony's to send in. Sorry, I shouldn't call you Tony. Anthony's to send in as well. Oh, looks like it's there. Cool, beautiful. All right, nice. So we have quorum. Yep, perfect. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. If it's okay with you, I'll get things underway. And as people sprinkle in, we'll get going here. So could I? Wow, it's been a long time since I've done this. Oh my God. Okay, so going on to disclosure pecuniary interest. Does anyone have anyone to add in on this note? Clara? Okay, good. Moving on, ceremonial activities. Like I said, good morning. That's great. We're going to jump right into judging by this. Jacob, if I could ask you a question, sir. So for this agenda going down, you set this up with aid of Mr. Burgess and others, or how did this get put together, if you don't mind me asking?
So I looked back in our files and just looked at some of the things that had not been done, and also some of the things that had been requested over the last week and a half or so. Okay. Okay, sounds good. Certainly, we can add anything if you need to, Dusty.
No, I'm just learning and what the new form, where the points are coming from. So that's great. Jumping into point number 4, presentation and deputation. So, Mr. Schuyler, like to make some points on the prime ag land. So, Brett, welcome. Good morning. The floor is yours, sir.
Good morning. I just was basically asked to talk on prime ag lands, and it'll be real quick. And I'm going to try to do this sharing here. All right, tell me if this is working here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so it's just a real simple point. In Norfolk County, there's basically two zonings here of we have prime agricultural lands and we have hazard lands. So, zooming in on one, we're seeing the black lines here that dictate that an area is hazard land, and everything else is prime agricultural land, more or less. And obviously, you'd get a planner to verify this, but I'm very confident with that information. And the point is, from a land use planning point of view, prime agricultural land, from what I've seen, it's kind of treated like Garden of Eden, like it's you a lot of policy to make sure that it doesn't get used for anything other than prime agricultural land, which is good intention. But what happens is this mapping is often it was done at a very large scale and is certainly not accurate. So it creates a lot of headaches for people trying to do different things. So like I think of one example, I'm thinking it was Mike might remember on zip lines, and they wanted to put some zip lines, but that was hazard land, and it created some different issues for them because it's zoned hazard land, and even though it'd be really suitable for zip lines, that wasn't a permitted use in hazard lands. And same on the prime agricultural lands. Was there some areas in here that you couldn't grow? You couldn't, that a jackrabbit would have to carry a lunch pail going across some of that prime agricultural land because nothing grows on it. And when somebody's looking to do something different with it, use it for another use, it can create a lot of issues. So I think the main point, and would really appreciate if Mike chimed in on this, is if there was an ability to show whether land is actually prime agricultural land or hazard land, or they've talked about creating other zonings, rural lands versus prime agricultural lands. But to me, the big point is if there were mechanisms to be able to demonstrate whether the mapping is reflective of the truth on that farm or not, it could be a very good thing. So this is something that's been talked about for a lot of years. And Mike, do you have any comments on what I just said and your understanding of that?
Yeah, you're right, Brett. And the thing is, there has been a lot of loosening up, and Anita Bunner knows that, with respect to being more lenient with respect to value-added businesses on agricultural lands and diversified uses in the last year or two. The one thing that we always debated was the fact that we didn't really want to be called a specialty crop land area like they have in Niagara, because that makes restrictions on development even more difficult than what we're going through now. And I think the fact that it's prime agricultural land is a softer way to go rather than specialty crop areas. Jason Burgess is probably quite familiar with what in Niagara, where they have much more stricter development regulations in the agricultural areas.
Yeah, my experience in Niagara was even when we had the University of Guelph experts come down and say, this piece of land wasn't farmable for a variety of reasons, the province was still didn't allow us to make it to change use on land. So I think it's a challenge that you just got to keep on working at and build up a pretty good evidence-based case to take to the province.
I think we have to get down to more details with respect to the particular development project. Like you say, Brett, there's places where there's probably listed prime agricultural land, and a lot of it deals with the management of the land. You can have a farmer that has the best land around, and if it's not managed properly, it won't produce. But then you can have another farmer who has a fairly rough piece of land, and he still makes a living off of it. We've seen that regularly.
Yeah, so from my my point, I was asked to date, I think just to give an update because it was something on the on the list, and yeah, that was just my memory on that, and don't know if there's anything for this committee to look with it, but just know that that those lines, although they can seem a little bit arbitrary and that sort of thing, they do create a lot of they're very important when people are trying to do different land use items, and it sounds like maybe there's been some work done already in the last couple of years to give some more flexibility. So there's yeah, I don't think there's any more to. That was just me giving an update, explaining that, and not sure if there's anything for the committee to go forward with on that.
What are you? What's your next step with this, Brett?
I don't have any next steps. It was really just a follow-up item where, maybe it creates some discussion points for members of the committee if there's something that should or shouldn't be done. But and my memory is not great on this and that, but I do think, as Councillor Columbus was saying, there's been some other work done on zoning and zoning and planning that has helped open up some of the permitted uses and that to make this maybe less of a critical item, but yeah, not really sure on that. It'd be more some questions for a planner and that. So I don't share what I have on that, but I don't have any suggestions or personal next items.
Okay, I see a hand up from Anita.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that map, Brett. This is the first time I've seen this one, and just a general comment. I find it very intriguing that there seems to be whole properties that are surrounded by black, some forested areas potentially, but yeah, you're zooming in on one there that looks like agricultural land, and so I'm not sure if that is a section that is designated as not agricultural, but yeah, there's interesting things here that might warrant the Ag Advisory Board looking at how those rules might have been established to select one entire property as hazardous versus one section.
And looking at this one, Anita, just to clarify, so it says OS, which I don't know what it stands for, but in that case, it wouldn't. Sorry?
Open space, I believe. I think that's a mistake. That's part of Malo Farms.
I would hope that that was a mistake if that is hazardous land.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that's some sort of special zoning that's more of the exception, and but over here where we get into the, well, this one here, there's hazard land, here, and then beside it is prime agricultural land, and obviously for that farm owner, when they're, they probably don't consider this hazard land compared to this prime agricultural land, and it only becomes an issue when you're looking to do something different on there. So, and again, some of the issues of 3 or 4 years ago may have been somewhat resolved by now in that. So that was, I think, just more the point that there are limitations to the mapping, but I don't believe the tools are in place right now when that mapping is incorrect. I think it becomes very challenging for when someone is trying to do something in that space.
Gentlemen, if I may just say something, it's Chris Garwood. Let's bear in mind that we have just completed and submitted to the province in the 2018 our official plan, which would have addressed a lot of the some of the adjustments that we have made. For example, what you have on the screen with this hazardous lands. Well, if there was an old creek or any kind of waterway, which clearly this is following, even though it doesn't flow across the land, when it floods, it will, or it might. So those are some of the things that's taken into consideration. And so this land won't be hazardous until you get a very hard downpour, and then this creek is going to overflow along here, and so on and so forth. So it's not arbitrary. I think so. A lot of the things that I'm looking at here is above what you can directly influence. It would have to go through a whole lot of layers to change. It's not impossible, but I don't know if from the committee level, we're going to start looking at hazardous lands and so on. Some of those things are very, very difficult to change. Just bear that in mind as we go forward.
Yeah, Mike here, that hazard land, you got to remember that could be all tiled as well to drain that so it's workable.
Exactly. There are a lot of other things happening below and so on, and has to do with water flow and all of those things.
Okay, that's great. Any more discussion or questions for Brett?
Yeah, I got a quick one here. So Brett, you used the example of Long Point Eco Adventures, so that hazardous land and the fact that it was actually prime land for the application. Do you know what the process was there, or how they effectively got the go ahead on that land in order to, I'm presuming, get the designation changed?
No, I don't, and I'm going off of memory. The one I was thinking about at the time, I remember there being some controversy. I think it's a lot of years ago now, but Mike may remembers on Radical Road a zip line there that was going in, and they had to do a lot of work because of the zoning and that. But does that ring any bells, Mike?
Yes, I recall that. It actually got turned down once, and then it became possible a second time around. Also, Long Point Eco Adventures there, I think Mike MacArthur at the time and his partners hired some high-priced consultants, and I know Brock University was involved to make that happen, and it was one of the first diversified uses for the winery industry. And that particular piece of land was actually very marginal along the lake shore, and that's why council actually supported the application.
Does that somewhat answer your question, Hayden?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. A question for Councillor Chris Garwood. I know going, when I started on this board a couple of years ago and going into this, there's a lot of promotion for, on-farm diversified use, and going in, to another season and beyond. Is that still a promotion that Norfolk County is still actively engaging in? Because that was all steam ahead a few years ago, and is that still something that's actively pursued by both, whether it's CDAB or that should be almost an action item for the Ag Advisory Board to see how can we continue to promote on-farm diversified use, or is that something that somewhat went wayside?
Okay, Dusty, I believe that's still in our official plan, and it's endorsed by council, and I know the Ministry of Ag and Food also supports it. Okay. Along with municipal affairs. So that is still very much in the making, the on-farm diversified uses, because it is in our official plan as approved.
Awesome.
So, and just to add to what Councillor Columbus just said, so prior to 2018, before we did the review of our official plan, on-farm diversification, you'd have to apply for it in the recent filing. What we did is make it as of right. So you almost automatically just go ahead and do and let us know what you're doing for on-farm diversification. I think we are one of the very few municipalities that have just gone ahead and allowed for on-farm diversification use as of right. We are way ahead of the rest of the municipalities, and I would say absolutely go ahead and promote on-farm diversified uses, because it allows for another income stream for our farmers. So if you're going to look at it as a promotional item to kind of educate your farmers, fine. But in terms of changes to the official plan, we are right at the top. It's as of right, so we are good where that is concerned.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the refresher. I do remember now that as of right, but that's great to hear. Any more questions for Brett, or Brett, do you have any points as well to add, sir?
No, just add that point that I think this was just a cleanup item on the list, and that's what why I got asked in today and that, and I do think there's been a lot of change since it was some of these issues were talked about last. So so I don't think there's necessarily anything to follow up on this issue.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for this item for sure. It's it's clearly relevant, and nobody understands their land more than us. That's great to have. Okay.
Just wondering, Dusty, if Brett could let us know where he's accessed that map. Was that one of the community maps? And if so,
yeah.
Chris, would you be able to share that link with the Ag Advisory Board?
Yeah, if I can show this again, because it is super handy for the 2 seconds it takes. So my habit is I Google Norfolk GIS, look for the community web map, and then the key things here is there's a base map gallery that you can choose the background layer, but the bigger for these layers here, it's just playing around in this layer list. So in that example, it was planning and development. So let's just say zoning, and there it pops up these layers. But there are a ton of handy things there in that that people who know to use it and that get a lot of value out of. So, but that's that, and I'm sure the link can be shared through the chair or whoever.
Brett,
Thanks, Brett. That's certainly a map that I referred. Sorry.
Go after you, Anita.
That's a map that I use often, that community web map as well, but I hadn't seen that, so thanks for guiding me through that. I think it's an important one, that if issues come up in our community, and as representatives of the Ag Advisory Board, it gives us a better understanding of the issues if we can refer to things like that. So thanks for your help.
Yep.
Brett, Mike here. While you have that map up there, if you scroll down, there's a map there that shows what properties looked like in 1964 versus today. It's in there somewhere, and it's very interesting. Yeah. You can see all
it's really cool.
Is that the one there?
No, it's absolutely a neat exercise to go through and you know, things in our own example and that I've seen like a neat one is there's a lot of woodlot today that didn't exist in 1964, and it's nice seeing things like that as an example. Like in our own case, when I went through and you just go, okay, what did things look like in 1964, and you can see how the landscape's changed a bit, and there's some of those type of things that are kind of refreshing.
Fantastic. Jacob, if could you, whether it's a simple step-by-step to include in the minutes, so that anyone looking into how to access this map can do so, because I mean, I'll tell you, I didn't know this was here, and this is going to be a great resource.
No problem.
Thank you, sir. Okay, well, Brett, you're welcome to stay for more of the meeting if you'd like, sir. if not, we appreciate your time here this morning.
No, thank you.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. So that's great. I love when things are moving through the pipeline. That's always to see things getting resolved and moving forward. So on that note, if I can get an approval, correction of the meeting minutes from our last meeting, that was on Tuesday, March the 3rd, 2020. Can I get any issues coming out of the previous minutes? Okay, seeing none, can I get an approval for the board minutes from March 3rd, 2020? Aiden, thank you.
I approve.
And
Trish.
Trish, perfect.
Sorry, I don't have
Thank
a hand to raise on my version.
That's all right. That's all right. Thank you. So, and can I get an approval for the minutes for our meeting for today, Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020?
The agenda, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, the agenda. Yeah, I'm talking in the somehow the future and the past at the same time. Hayden, thank you kindly. Beautiful. Okay. So moving on to the tracking table that, one note for Jacob. Jake, could you please, for future agendas, attach the Ag Advisory Board action tracking table to the current agenda? Because it's on the minutes from the package from the March 3rd meeting, but if we could have it as well for the current agenda, that'd be beautiful.
No problem.
Thank you, sir. So going back to then the action tracking table, so we quite a few items on here, and like at the beginning of it, it is one thing that during some discussions and conversations we've had with CAO Burgess and some others is just how important this tracking table is, and Councillor Columbus and Van Passen have raised up, among other members, just how important A, this table is, and B, just how deep it's getting. Now, I realize that a lot of these items are sitting at potentially provincial levels or whatnot. But yeah, it's, we are making sure that we're trying to knock these off, get them crossed off, so we are getting things moving to the pipeline. Like case in point, the first one being on-farm septic. Council sent a letter to the province about outstanding concerns, and we are still awaiting a response. And as of November, continuing to wait for a response from province. I do not want to default to the same response of, well, it's COVID. I'm sure septic tanks for on-farm aren't a high priority, but still, it's something that we need to stay on top of it. So if I can defer to either CEO Jason or Councillor Columbus on this one, is there something that we should be doing to continue that this file gets revisited at the province? Is it something that we need to ask council to do again? If I can add one more final note as well, like in our the phone call we had, the discussions we've had, Hayden and I did have a phone call that was set up by Hayden, so thank you again for that, with Toby's office, and all of the meeting minutes are going to be sent through from the Ag Advisory Board to Toby's office. So if we're waiting on responses, specifically from the provincial level, Toby's office has requested that we send those notes through so they can see if there's anything they can do on their end to see these provincial level items to be at least be revisited if needs be. So if I can defer back to the original question, is what should we be doing about on-farm septic for whether at this level or all the way up, Councillor?
Dusty, Mr. Chair, I can start. As you know, we had information supplied to us by Fritz Enslin originally. you can appreciate that department's gone under some severe challenges with respect to staffing.
Yeah.
Ms. Budis, I believe, is probably the person, maybe Jason can comment on this too, to bring this back in line with what we're doing. We had presentations to, I believe it was the Ministry of Environment with respect to this issue, on-farm septic systems. And haven't received a reply from the province because it involves building code and environmental changes. So to bring it back in line to where we have to get it back on the menu, I think we have to get Mr. Fritz Enslin back involved, and maybe Mr. Burgess can comment on where we go from here, because it has been quite some time, almost a year, since we actually dealt with it.
So I'm not, I'll be the first to admit I'm not familiar with this specific issue. If it is a building code issue, it is best to put Fritz involved in it, but it sounds like there's an issue with the Ontario building code, so Fritz's hands will be tied. So it becomes something that we can work through communications. My suggestion would be anytime you're trying to move the province on something, you develop a lobby package, that has all the points of views on it, legal, building code, that kind of stuff. So it's something that we can put on our government relations to-do list, which is something that I don't think Norfolk County has traditionally done GR work on a kind of on a strategic basis. So it's something that we can certainly put on there. So Councillor Columbus, if we could maybe have an offline chat or with Dusty, just so I can get up to speed on the issue, I'll bring Fritz into it. And then if it's something that we need to work with the province, we can put that on our lobbying agenda.
Okay, thank you. Jacob, I see your hands up, sir.
Yes, Trish wasn't able to put her hand up digitally, so I'm just speaking on her behalf, so she can go ahead.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Hi.
Trish.
I was just going to say that this issue might become critical because I'm hearing in the news people talking about bunkhouse reform, or farmers may want to do something to improve the situation in terms of their communal housing. And specifically, this issue is going to stand in the way of doing that because they're limited right now as if they have a 1 acre property rather than a whole farm in terms of that septic system. And I know we had someone, I think it was Mr. Van Berlo, that came in a couple years ago, who had a number of workers on the farm, and his smaller bunkhouse no longer passed, and he needed to build a larger one, but it was going to take over a year to get the environmental study done so that he could renovate or build a new bunkhouse. So it's something that's going to have to, if the province wants changes or the municipality wants changes to bunkhouses, and to be able to allow farmers to do that, this is going to have to change because it's going to limit them.
It's a really good point.
It might be a way to get the province to move a little faster than what they have been.
Right, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Something to actually add to that package. Hayden, yes, sir.
Yeah, not a lot to add from what Trish just mentioned, but I think really good key point there. And what can we do to move this on? Because if there's people out there wanting to make changes in their operations in order to develop a process for improving the situation, be able to handle COVID-19 at the farm, it's something they've got to be able to do pretty quickly. So yeah, anything we can do to push that thing along, I think real key one for agriculture.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah, so Mr. Burgess and Councillor, happy to have an offline chat with you. That way we can get up to date as to what the entire issue looks like, and obviously why it matters, where's the pinch points, and what are we asking. Happy to have that conversation with you. Okay, before I move on to the next point, two things. Any more discussion on farm septic? Seeing none, I would like to welcome, thanks for joining Remy, and also I see a phone number here. Is that
That's Councillor
Christine
Martin,
Perry?
Dusty.
That's Councillor Martin. Okay, thanks for joining, Councillor Martin. Thank you. Good morning. Okay, cool. So moving on to the next one. This has been now in the going on for a full 2 years plus. But it was relatively we've received good response from staff regarding the road entrance permits, and I know we did have a discussion last time about this, and that it would almost go case by case, but it was not taken off the action tracking in regards to road entrance permits, because we still haven't seen anything official. Am I correct on that one, Councillor? For road entrance permits, Councillor Mike?
Yes. Sorry, I had to step away for a minute there, but yes, you and I met with the acting general manager, Jason Godby. We were supposed to get something in writing.
Yeah.
Now, he has been pretty flexible to date with respect to these entrance permits for farmers. So I would expect that that particular department's had several vacancies, so they're overwhelmed with work in the last few months. So I would say that it's just a matter of getting that letter and some kind of a guideline in place on flexibility with these entrance permits.
Okay. Is that something that that we can sort of do a Coles notes of our meeting back in January 17th to put forward for him to grab a hold on, and push? Like, how does that work? I'm illiterate when it comes to that.
Well, I think Mr. Burgess is here now, CAO, and he can probably relate and have a discussion with Mr. Godby about this on how we move forward with resolving this, to put it in writing so everybody's more comfortable with it.
Yep.
Yeah, Jacob, can you take that down as staff direction, and then we'll follow up?
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, as the face of farming and farming structures are developing, whether it's like we're talking about on-farm diversified, or people building different things, this is putting on their farm. This is a key part, as farms aren't just one entrance in square fields any longer. There's a lot of traffic, and I realize that in the same breath we don't want 100 driveways, but if we can have some understanding what we're asking for, that'd be beautiful, and some flexibility. Any more conversation on road entrance permits? Okay. Importing soil importing into the county. So we did back in 2018 on the 25th of October, the Ag Advisory Board made a motion, recommended council direct staff to develop bylaw regulating importation of excess soil from other jurisdictions. Staff has requested audience with senior leadership team. So update last November on the 2019, staff will be presenting to senior leadership at Norfolk County in November 2019. Where do we look on that? I know that was Anita. Have you heard anything more on that? I know you were working on this file, on this as well. Is there anything for importation?
No, there's nothing that I can add. It was something that I became aware of, and certainly is important. With the GTA expanding so quickly, they're looking for places to dump their excess soil, and that doesn't always improve soils when you do that. And so I just brought that for information, but I don't know where Norfolk stands on that. I know we had OMAFRA present that were going to comment as well, but just to make sure that we're protecting our land here in Norfolk, not that one farmer in one generation says, oh, I'll get paid to take all of this surplus or excess soil and destroy the property for the next generation.
Right. Okay. So, Councillor Columbus, was this presenting senior leadership? Was this presented? Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. this was a huge issue. You may recall a couple of years ago where trucks were transporting soil from the GTA area to the Waterford area gun club. There was load after load dumped into that site, and we were told it was not contaminated, but you never know. And there was trucks lined up all over the 24 highway north of Simcoe there, and spotting the whole 24 highway with soil, you may recall. And that's what, along with what Anita has mentioned, that's what brought this to an issue to the Ag Advisory Board.
Okay. It's come to my attention that as well it's happening in Haldimand County. So is there any sort of, are there other neighboring counties that are experiencing the same issues, and can we see what they're doing? Would that be something for, versus writing our own, seeing what other counties are doing, and maybe that's something that we could take on the future? Is there, you know, for lack of a better term, I know I understand we share health units, but we don't share councils or whatnot. But is this something that we should maybe other agricultural neighbors be looking like to see what sort of movements they're making on other issues, including this one as well? If that's something that's worthwhile, the extra effort.
Jason,
consensus to look for.
Jason Burgess, who in your employ there at the county would look after something of this nature? Would it be planning and development, or public works, or who could assist the?
It falls kind of in between. We don't have a pure, like, normally this would come under environmental compliance position, but we don't have that. So it'd be kind of a combination between, it mostly fall in the planning. So it's something we'd refer to, and we can certainly look at, best practices from other communities. I know these days taking any type of dirt, comes at a cost. So it's something we can refer to planning at this point in time, and we'll go from there.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. So on that note, what will be, at the end of it, we'll talk about when our next meeting is, but for tracking this, how do we make sure that we're staying on top of this? I guess for Jacob to make sure if we can have this list updated, that what I do ask Jacob, that for the tracking tables, that you do not remove, or for any of the items, do not remove the 2019 staff will be presenting senior leadership blurb on any of them. If you can please simply add a second line so we can have the timeline for each of these, that would be greatly appreciated, sir.
No problem.
Okay. Any more notes or comments on the importation of soil? Okay. Moving on to lot relocation. To propose changes to the PPS to exclude requests from Norfolk on lot relocations. Farmers are encouraged to contact Toby directly, since the PPS review was closed on the 21st of October. And this is December 19th, 2018. And then again, November 2019, a lot was happening in November last year. Norfolk County Solicitor has submitted a letter to the province. So, this will be a note to see for when we send these notes through to Toby's office to see what we can get out. If we can get an answer on this. Lot relocations are obviously a very is a full-bodied conversation. For the sake of it, does anybody else have anyone to add on this? Aiden?
Yeah, so just a quick one on that. I wonder if the letter from the county's legal has been sent out on the position of Norfolk County. I was wondering if that would be a public item that we would be able to get and attach with the minutes, so that if anybody is looking at the Ag Advisory Board minutes and they want to approach Toby on it, that they can take that letter and say Norfolk County's asked for an opinion on this, and we're understanding that there's no resolution or response at this point.
Hayden, Mike here. I believe that the ministry, Ms. Budas has sent that letter to the province, and I believe the Ministry of Municipal Affairs has turned that request down. As you may recall, there was a development lot swap proposed by Mr. Tom Klein, legal counsel for Chester Stenclick, that got turned down next to the Scotland operation, and also the Schuyler Farms got one turned down. So it's going to take more lobbying, I believe, on behalf of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to convince them to make a change.
Okay. Is that something the board wants to try to send another notification of the flagpole, or what is our best bet on this one, if it's something that we believe in?
I think perhaps we need some clarification from Ms. Budas, our lawyer, county lawyer, to clarify where we're at with this would be best at this time.
Okay. All right. So that is looking for an update from her. Beautiful. All right. Okay. Any more points on lot relocations? Okay. I'm not going to go into it because we've all had the discussion of why we believe that there's a lot of merit behind having the ability for lot relocation, obviously case by case. We don't want to have this be to be able to be exposed or to be found loopholes, but there's a lot of good that can come out of it as well. Because again, like to know, like when Brett was talking, we understand our farms as well. So if we can make the most out of it, while also preserving prime ag land, that's the goal of this lot relocation. Okay, going on to the next one. So yeah, prime ag land discussion, and Brett did the follow-up. So that's fantastic, and we have now the information available on the GIS that we can access too. So that one is pretty much our first one that's coming off the tracking tables. That's exciting, guys. Congrats. Going on to the next one, the new council primer. I have a meeting booked for council and committee presentation at 3 p.m. On July the 14th. So speaking with Owen at Clerks, I'll be going on, and I know back in March we were talking about if everyone could send through sort of their sort of, if I can use a Jason Burgess term, a 30,000 foot up viewpoint for what your specific industry is looking like, not getting into the nitty gritties of the economics per se, maybe of day to day, but what is coming out of your specific industries? What can you offer in terms of whether employment numbers? What are we asking? What does it bring to? If you have any from your also from your grower associations, OFPGA, Ginseng Ontario, Apples, etc. Some other numbers that are key at these times are also. I know the OFPGA and the Hort Council has the economic multiplier numbers. So, for every dollar that's created on the farm, it creates X amount for rural communities, for local businesses, as well for, back in their home countries, for migrant workers specifically. Also the crop makeup is something that's big to know. Like in Delhi, we have one of North America's largest tulip growers. That's phenomenal, right? And a lot of these things are that's coming through from Councillor Columbus. But I mean, there's a lot of these sectors that are large in Norfolk County that I want to get into this 5 to 10 minute snapshot. So any sort of information you can get, I appreciate it before July 14th. So that's in 3 weeks. Mr. Robinson.
On behalf of Ms. Fortier.
Oh, Trish, sorry.
This isn't very efficient. I just had something to add on the lot relocation, because I believe after the last meeting, I called Bobby Ann to see what the holdup was with Toby Barrett's office. and she had looked into it, and it's an issue with the land registry and how they do the swap and still make people accountable. So she had suggested that we come up with some solutions on how we can make that happen, in terms of the land registry swap and tools for enforcement, and then go to solutions to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, to Minister Steve Clark, and that Toby would probably send a letter to support that if we can get to that level. So I'm not quite sure how we do that, but that was the information she gave me at the time.
Does she have by chance the current, like if we're talking like the registry, because I'm refreshing my mind now. I remember there was one way if you apply for it, it gets held up. So there's for some reason the information does not follow when they're swapped. Is that am I right with that, Trish?
Yeah, it's
there's
something
the
like
communication
that.
did not go.
I've got to find. Yeah. I've just got like my chicken scratch from when I was on the phone with her. That's all I could find right now, because I forgot about it until we started talking about it. But I think I made some notes and maybe sent an email to the whole Ag Advisory Board after that meeting.
I'll take a look into that. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Because
but I can touch base with her again if need be.
Yeah, that way I guess we can see what is the exact specific issue that it sounds like when we were speaking with this last time that it was almost like it was like an administration issue that we just need to be able to solve to who looks after the swap. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Trish.
You're welcome.
So that one stays on there. Big time. Okay. Jumping back to the primer, any other issues? We already talked about this back in March, but any other input on this? This is not an Ag Advisory Board primer. This is an agriculture primer. Just to make that clear. Okay. July 14th. Cool. Norfolk County Road 45 bridge is. Jason, we were lightly talking about it a couple Wednesdays ago. This is something that still impales a lot of us here on the west side for not having that bridge. Now I do know that because of the flip that happened, it is stuck in relative administration purgatory, which is unfortunate. I don't know when. And we at the Ag Advisory Board, the Coles notes is that we try to provide practical solutions to also maintain the potential marketing of the bridge, because it is it's in serene hills here, south of Langton, but as well try to uphold and provide functionality to this bridge for specifically modern agricultural equipment. And unfortunately, it got stuck in a tumbler. The bridge really got highlighted because now it's been out for I think it's going on its second or third season. But when the McDowell #1, just up the river, just north of it, 2 roads, when that happened, a bridge also went out. So there was no way to get Simcoe because both of the main conduits getting there. I should say there was no way. You could go all the way halfway to Cortland and loop down, or if you want to go to Dover or whatever. That was a big pain. So that was a bit of an issue with the 45, as well as that area. There's a lot of farmers that farm on both sides of this transportation bridge, and seemingly they're cut off, or they have to travel far distances to get around. So I don't know how or when we can begin talks again on this, so that we can bring forth our positive motion that we believe was a very admirable solution. So I don't know where it's at. Do you have any more information on that?
I have an update, Dusty, if you want.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Is that okay? Or I don't want to step on any toes here, Councillor Columbus. Jason?
Yes, I was going to add some history to what Dusty
Go ahead.
had.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Yeah, this bridge has been out for at least 2 years. It was replaced there when the old regional government came. It was only put there for a 10-year period, and then it was supposed to be rebuilt. So the former Norfolk County Council, the one that preceded this particular council, voted in support of a 2-lane concrete bridge in that location because it is a county road and not just a concession road. And they had, the Valley Engineering was hired. They had already spent $120,000 in engineering and design of a 2-lane bridge. And then came along the new council, and the new council chose to look at a 1-lane bridge in that area versus a 2-lane. And it was appealed by 3 parties, Sylvite, Ag Supply, they supply fertilizer and chemicals to the farm community. It was appealed by a farmer who owns land on both sides, and he has to drive 8.5 kilometers around to get to his other farms. And also it was appealed by an engineer. So it's sitting on the desk of Minister Urich to come up with a decision, which he has not done so yet. They're well aware of the situation. It's been worked through Toby Barrett's office as well to try to speed this up, but there's been no movement on it. So perhaps, Jacob, you've got something to share with us.
Yeah, just very briefly, I contacted Jason Godby prior to the meeting, and I'm just going to read verbatim here. This item was addressed in June 2019. I did not receive any comments or response back on this from AAB. However, I am unaware if Chris Baird did or if there was any additional conversations about it with him as the general manager at the time. If the AAB is expecting additional response or information, please feel free to have them make a request and staff will follow up.
Yeah, and just a further update. So I know the mayor has written a letter asking for a timeline on the appeal process. I do have concerns when I was brought up to speed on this issue with regards to whether the full cost of budgeting for the road work to and from the bridge was fully appreciated in the capital budget for a 2-lane bridge. Dusty, I think my understanding from our previous conversation was that I don't know if it's an ag committee position or whether it was just your position personally, was that you guys were looking more for if I remember correctly, a 1-lane bridge that could accommodate modern agricultural equipment, and that was your position on the matter. So it looks like there's lots of opinions on this. It's sitting at appeal right now, whether it be a 1-lane or a 2-lane bridge. But I think you can certainly, if it is a position of the Ag Advisory Committee that for a solution, it might be something that we can work into the appeal to try to get a decision sooner rather than later on the bridge. And then realistically, then it's got to go through our capital plan project again, because we have to relook at the costing of this thing to make sure whatever we had previously budgeted is still aligned to what today's cost would be.
Oh, Aiden, yes, there we go. I'm muted.
Yeah, and everybody else can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think what was happening at the time that we discussed it and it came up in front of the Ag Advisory Board is there was a petition going around of which a lot of the farmers in that area were signing. So it was a fairly heated kind of conversation in the ag community. The flip-flop there that was going on, whether it's 2-lane or a 1-lane, I think what we discussed is that's not really a position of the Ag Advisory Board to decide, but it would be nice if it would accommodate today's agricultural equipment is the position that we took on it. And it was basically just, hey, this is an issue for the agricultural community because we have this bridge and it's not being able to be used at the moment. We've got people that have to be able to travel from one side to the other of that bridge, and they have to go around a bunch of roads there to do it at the moment. And then, yeah, it wasn't necessarily that we caused any flip-flops there. We were just basically supporting the fact that could we move on with this bridge and get it done, get it out of the way, because it's causing a lot of angst with the farming community in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a position, Jason, of the entire Ag Advisory Board, because what we understood that we were on the back end, that we only had one more opportunity, or I'd say we came into it late, because we weren't aware that this was happening, the going back and forth. So the Ag Advisory Board stepped in when it was then said, I guess 20 or 25 people showed up to the council chambers, concerned citizens saying, no, we want it to be a one-lane bridge. So, okay, you want it to be a one-lane bridge. So we said, fine, one-lane bridge, let's get this thing built. We've already, from what we're understanding, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the hole between engineering plans, and we just want our freaking bridge. And at the same time, to be able to accommodate modern agriculture implements. That's what we were really trying to push. And I wasn't aware that there was a gap in communication from Godby to the Ag Advisory Board. I will go through emails to see if it was on me, but I don't believe, I don't know what that actual comment is on. But I want to make sure that, okay, how do we get this, make sure that, you know, what the local farmers want, because that's what we're here for, to make sure their voices are heard. So I'll look into that, but that is the stance of the Ag Advisory Board to one-lane bridge, fine. I believe Councillor Columbus went out there and measured the current, Mike, what's the current width of the bridge? Is it 14 feet?
Yes,
Something
I
like
believe it's from side to side, it's about 14 and a half feet, and it's about 150 feet long, I think it is. It's a fairly big bridge. Got to go across there.
And if I think we're looking for a 16-foot wide or a 17-foot wide. I mean, you're not going to bring a corn head perpendicular through it, but you know, to accommodate that, that's what we're asking for. Jacob, I see your hands up, sir. Is that Trish again? I apologize, Trish.
Oh no, sorry, that was from before.
Okay. So that's where that stood, Jason, and yeah, so that's all there. But I guess if it's done, your exec, what can I'll get in touch with Godby. Councillor Columbus, if I could task you on that one, if you and I could spearhead that one to get in touch with Godby to see what sort of direction he's looking for, or
Mr.
comment.
Chairman, I can tell you that I speak because I get a lot of pressure from the ag community on this particular bridge. I have spoken to Mr. Godby several times. He is definitely not holding anything up, nor is his department. It's all in the hands awaiting the minister, Jeff Urich, to sign the documents on which way he wants to go with this appeal. Okay. That's where the holdup is. Toby Barrett's office is also aware of all this.
Yeah. Okay. And like I said, the mayor sent a letter, I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago, to the minister asking for a decision or a timeline on the decision. I don't believe there's been a response to that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, well that'll be a lot to fit in that box, Jacob. So good luck. So moving on to the next item. Actually, any more comments on the Bailey Bridge? Okay. PSWs. Okay, so this was a hot button topic last year. Council refused the amendment on May 14th, directed staff to bring report fall 2019 on how to repeal existing PSW, provincially significant wetland designations, from the official plan and zoning bylaws and redesignation. So in November 2019, there's an update. Planning staff will take report to council on December 5th, 2019. What was the result of that? I believe we understood that, yep, they're not respecting the PSWs, or I shouldn't say that, but is there any more comments on that? No? Yeah, I think that's something. sorry, Councillor.
Dusty, Mike here. I can't recall just exactly where that whole thing's at. I know Pam Dusling, who was formerly held the general manager position, was working on it, and where that whole provincially significant wetland issue is at right now with council, I really cannot recall.
Yeah. Okay. I do know that was a relative win when council refused the amendment. But I'd be interested to see what the report to council was on the 5th of December. Okay. Any more comment on PSWs? Anne, there we are.
Yeah. I think the challenge might be that, so council overturned last year's when they were going to introduce more PSW lands, but I guess there had been some land that was already designated that way that growers weren't aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I definitely think it needs to remain on here. How do we get it reversed, or how do you appeal it? Because it was just, you know, you look on the maps, you've already been designated that, but you were never made aware of it.
Right. Okay. So then, yeah, this report then is very crucial. Okay, I'll try to get a follow up on that.
Dusty, Mr. Chairman, Mike here. I do recall that council wrote direction to the province with respect to the concern. I know that happened for sure, and I just can't remember the feedback on it.
Okay. All right. So Dusty, to follow up and for that staff report from November 29th or December 5th, right? Okay. All right. The Climate Change Committee. Circulate the minutes between Ag Advisory Board and Climate Change Committee. I guess that'd be a question for Owen. And then now for Jacob going forward. The Climate Change Committee, are they still, they're still active in meeting?
Owen, are you on that? Is the Climate Change Committee still active in meeting?
Okay.
Yes, they are.
So, beautiful. So if we could, I'm going to try my hardest. Well, we'll see. We'll talk after about our next meeting. But yes, part of that paralleling is the sharing of minutes, and so that attaching to their agenda so that the Ag Advisory Board is visible to the Climate Change Committee. I don't know if it's something that I need to talk to either Jason on or councillors or Chris Garwood. What does the board think about sharing minutes with TDAB and TDAB sharing minutes with us? I was fortunate to sit on TDAB's call last night just for the first hour to discuss Ag Advisory Board goings on. It did steer at the very end. It did steer to the 3-man per bunkhouse, but I stayed above on that one. But yeah, I don't know if what's the board's thoughts on sharing and being able to see what TDAB is saying, because of course the on-farm diversified use. I know that the TDAB is at this point trying to develop a welcome wagon program. So how do we welcome and create the unity with the migrant workers that are already here, and making sure that they feel like they want to be here, that the community wants them here, etc. But as well as the incoming men and women for the rest of the season as well. What does 2021 and beyond look like for a red carpet? So is that something that the board would be interested in having attached to the minutes or to the agenda, or would you rather just simply keep it easy, and if you want to go look online, you can?
I think it's good that to be informed and to see what all the other advisory boards are doing. I would suggest that all these meetings are public anyway. The meetings are usually posted. I would say whoever wants to see the minutes, just go online and look them up, and to add paper after paper and make the packages just bigger and bigger. I don't think there's much benefit to that. As I said, we post the minutes on the website, and anybody is free to have a look at them.
Okay. Does the Climate Change Committee share their minutes between any other committees, or just Ag?
I'm not. Jacob, could you check on that, because I'm not affiliated with the Climate Change Committee. I've never been to one of their meetings.
I will
all the minutes would be public, though.
I will double check with Owen, and just as a reminder too, you can of course go onto YouTube and watch all of the meetings as well. Everything's posted.
Okay, good deal. Right, okay. And then the last part being the Workforce Planning Board of Grand Area. So Ms. Danette Dalton requested contact information for the Ag Advisory Board members. And I believe Clark was going to get that information to Danette. I don't know if that happened. Hayden?
Yeah, so it was just on the last point there, collaboration in order to improve the persona around offshore workers and help support that with working with TDAB on that. I just want to make sure that there's a motion there that for that to be fully supported, because I think it's a big thing. There's a big need for that to happen in our community, and I fully endorse anything that that supports the welcoming of migrant workers. I realize that that it's a tough one this year with media and different things going on here, but supporting that for the future, your 2021 discussions, I think somebody needs to take the reins on that one. And yeah, if nobody else was looking to do it, I'd say you're pretty well connected there, Dusty. And I'd like to put a motion forwards that you continue to work on that on behalf of the Ag Advisory Board and report back to us.
Okay, I will. Something I'm passionate about. Happy to work on that profile. I'm excited to hear that that group is doing that, and yeah, I'll work with Michelle and the team over there to see what that looks like. Because obviously we're low on resources, but we're trying to get the most bang for the buck during an interesting time where we were lined up for a banner year with the Football Association tournament that brings both football players and community and food trucks and everybody in. We had the downtown Simcoe party. That was a big success, among other events that we're not able to pull off in large groups. But what is the connection that we can get for whether it's bringing different like their ethnic food to the farm, or any sort of packages or any sort of celebration, obviously metaphorically, at this point, for these people to make sure it's good and they feel welcome. So I'll be happy to work on that file. Is that something we need to pass as a motion so that council's aware this is happening, or is it something that we just do collaboratively? Might be a question for councilors. I have no idea. Okay, well, we'll just, yep.
Mike here, yeah. Well, I think Hayden wanted it as a motion, I do believe. There's not many motions have come out of this Ag Advisory Board meeting here today. So it's being added as an item to the action item list, it should at least be in the action item list, I would think.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. The only reason I mentioned motion there is just if it's two advisory groups working together, I want to make sure that that's fully supported, endorsed on both sides. And yeah, that's the only reason that I was mentioning motion, so that it's not confusing to anybody as to the direction that we're asking to go in there.
Okay, no, makes sense. And that way, it's one specific thing that we're looking after, or looking at, I should say. Okay. I'm just going to call it a motion for collaboration with TDAB for migrant worker welcome wagon. For both 2020 and future. Okay. Okay. Yep. That's I like that. Any more comments on this piece?
Dusty, I hate to interrupt. Jason Burgess, I have another meeting scheduled, so I'm just going to move to that meeting. I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to come into the meeting, and if there's any further undertakings, I'll just make sure Jacob writes down staff undertakings. Dusty, he can circulate that to you to ensure we capture it all, and then it'll go through our process here that we look at for undertakings that staff have to report back on.
For sure. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining us today.
Have a good day, guys.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, perfect. Well, that was great. Okay, so moving on to item number 6, communications. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? Communications, or whether it's communications coming in or councillors coming providing some? Mr. Hayden?
Just to go back to that for a second there, the motion that's on the floor, I think you need buy-in from everybody.
Oh yeah, that's right. I am rusty. I'm changing my name. Okay, so if I can have, I believe how I wrote it up is that the motion be for collaboration with TDAB for, in quotes, a migrant worker welcome wagon package for the 2020 season and future seasons. So then we can go into further detail as to what that looks like. Hayden?
Can I also just put on there as well that and a request for council to fully support any collaboration with that project.
Jacob, are you writing this down professionally?
As professional as I can do, Dusty.
Could you read that back then, all put together, please?
Sure. The motion indicates that the Agriculture Advisory Board collaborate with the Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Board on migrant worker welcome wagon package for this season and future seasons, and also request that council support the collaboration of both advisory boards. Is that professional enough?
That's great. And what I want to make clear is that there's going to be, like, what the program that we're going to administer for 2020 is obviously going to be a skeleton version, and we'll also be discussing what the 2021 looks like. Hopefully, it's whether what it looks like. So that there's almost like 2 different programs, and we're not just going to have the same one that we're just going to roll out. Just so that's understood. If anyone is opposed to that, but I realizing that we're trying to roll something out in July when everyone's busy. It's going to be difficult. But I'm looking forward to starting 2021 off with a program. But no, that's great, Jacob. Thank you. Now, can I get someone? Okay, now 1 second. Okay, so can I get someone to please support that motion? Nobody likes it? Uh-oh. Okay. All right. Well, then I can't pass this on if no one supports this motion. I'm okay with it.
Sorry, Dusty. Trish supports and approves.
Trish? Okay, good deal. I must have like a bad leg with Trish. I apologize. Okay. Thank you, Trish.
Dusty, perhaps, I know it's difficult doing this virtually, but perhaps you can ask if anybody is opposed.
Yeah, that's easier. Yep, motion for sure. On that note, do we have anyone opposed to this? Seeing none, thank you. That's great, Hayden. Thank you, sir. Okay. Okay. Good. All right, communications. Do we have any input for communications from anyone, the councillors, clerk's office, or myself? Well, I have something to add in, is that I can send out the article from the grower that was put out. So Karen Davidson for the grower, June 22nd, so yesterday, last night, I saw this come out. That the Essex County leaders have partnered with the Ontario Greenhouse Board of Vegetables growers, Ontario Greenhouse Specialty growers, to improve the health and safety of local communities by developing a comprehensive response strategy. So they're rolling out wide-scale testing. We need to be ready to respond with isolation facilities, financial, medical, mental health supports for all agri-food employees. So Windsor Essex is certainly doing their own in collaboration with community partners and OGVG for both testing in their specific county for migrant workers specifically, and then what does it look like post. I'm going to send this out so you guys can see this, and I don't know if this is something that the Ag Advisory Board wants to look at doing. Now, this was being pushed, and seemingly one of the councillors was one of the big promoters for this, Gary McNamara. So I don't know if that's something that we want to look at, but just so that we're aware, I will circulate this article for you guys' viewing pleasure after this meeting. But I guess if this is a time where I'd like to open up just a few, sort of the floor to everyone to discuss how do we, as a board, and what you're feeling that we can send through and sort of either get the minutes or be taking articles on. Obviously, specifically, we can we've discussed a 3-man per bunk, which is something that we can talk about putting a motion through, because we have not, as a collective board, sent through anything in terms of the 3-man bunk or any of the isolation programs. Is there any other issues that we feel that in that same breath that we'd also like to report up to council, issues that agriculture is specifically experiencing with COVID, whether it's employee/employer mental health? Are we talking about market uncertainties, lack of funding coming from the feds or the province, or the fact that who is administering this funding, on-farm testing? I'm opening the floor here so that we can talk about a comprehensive package for issues that are being experienced on the farm. And I will open the floor, please. If anybody wants to take the reins on this one to start us off. If not, I'm just going to start on the left. I don't want to call anybody out, but if that's something that you don't want to bring up, that's fine. But what we're trying to do is give a total true snapshot for issues being dealt on the farm. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Dusty. Yeah, okay, I'll kick it off here, break the ice a little bit. I think looking at the overall picture here and what's been going on, just a kind of a bit of a summary from my perspective. I've been reaching out, and you and I have been talking a lot on this matter. We've had a meeting here the other night with Jason Burgess and some staff. Unfortunately, Dr. Shanker wasn't able to attend that meeting. You sent a bit of a summary out following that meeting there, just to give some correspondence. I think from my perspective, just to share a little bit of information with the board, with the Ag Advisory Board here. So the 3-person per bunkhouse rule creates challenges just beyond the significance of what we need for housing here to accommodate workers. it also puts us in a position where we have less workers available. And I think that creates another challenge, because all of a sudden we're looking at, well, how do we utilize these people across different facets of our business? It also puts more strain on the management at the farming operation, and it creates challenges from the perspective of when you're short of workers because of a rule or a policy that's in place. It creates challenges that go beyond just shortage of workers. It creates some frustrations or some inability in order to manage your operation appropriately. So we spent a lot of time talking on this back and forth. One of the things I think I really wanted to get across and convey is, yeah, we've had some conversations to date with management at the county. The only really the one person that can have an effect on policy is Dr. Nasathari. And basically, yeah, I've come to the conclusion on this that he's the only one that can change anything or have an effect on it. I sent right from the onset this out to him directly and offered help and support. And we've only really had conversations about COVID-19 to date. We haven't taken as a county, as a health unit, and working with agriculture, I don't think we've taken a very proactive approach to it. And I think that's what I'd really like to see going forwards, is more of a proactive approach to post-isolation issues that we're experiencing, because I don't think it's isolation issues. I think it's post-isolation issues that we're experiencing challenges with at the farming level. And I think that we really need to think about how we're going to get out in front of that at this time, with providing information on best practices to farmers. I think that's our best way forward. I mean, as an industry, we've already got people like OF and VGA that are reporting back to us and saying, hey, we've developed some guides. And I think we need to do that locally and share some of the best practices that are actually going on in farms. I actually made the suggestion to Jason Burgess that I would fully support putting together a best practices document. And if we could somehow jointly work together with the Ag Advisory Board in order to do that, to get the information, present it to farmers, and put it in a format where we start talking about all the great things we're doing, instead of just having the negative impact of the outcome of COVID-19 presented to us all the time, and be challenged with rules and regulations and compliance. So I'll leave it at that, but that's just kind of a bit of a summary for me. I haven't been taken up on that offer, and I've presented many times the fact that I want to be involved in the solutions and not just the problems. And I think that's where we've really got to get to if we want to have an effect on the challenges that we've got with COVID-19 outbreaks at the farm.
Dusty, I would like to add that I think a lot of energy has been on the 3-person per bunkhouse, and I think we're missing some opportunities. I would agree with Hayden that farmers need some more tools, and that there's some, albeit I recognize that probably was put there with the best of intentions. I think there are some unintended consequences of the 3-man per bunkhouse, at least on some farms, particularly the larger ones. When I'm reading all of the literature that's posted all over the place from workplace safety and prevention, I believe the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario just came out with some things. They're talking about other things like developing group cohorts. And I know I've talked about this a few times in my circles, that it makes sense to me that the people working in one bunkhouse would be, or living in one bunkhouse would be working together, and that we're not having cross-contamination. And I'm guessing that's what happened at Scott Lynn, just because it was so widespread there. And I know I've got clients that are doing a very good job with that. They're working, they might be all in the same field, but they're keeping those groups separate. Even that they're getting on the bus, one group at a time, the bus is all being wiped down and then the next group's going in. And these are all things that I think we've missed the boat on. And it also talks about when workers are coming in, that they kind of stay in that one group and they're not added to another one. And I think that is presenting challenges. This 3-person is presenting challenges to the farmers to do the best job they can overall in terms of risk, because if you've got 3 people coming into one home, and then you're kind of forced to move them into another one to make room for 3 more. Whereas if you could bring in your work units and have them stay together, I think they can manage that risk better. And what obviously I don't have all the details, but what I'm reading in the news in terms of all these outbreaks here and in Essex, a lot of them sound like they're coming post-isolation and from the community. And, you know, a lot of farmers I'm talking to, they've been kind of pushed in a corner. They have to cut back their crops because they can't manage it. When they're running short of labor and time is short, they're bringing in whatever locals they can find or these services that are out there. And, you know, I've had past experience with some of those services, and I don't know that they're always all that well managed, right? So how do we know what those workers that are being brought to the farm are bringing? And so suddenly this farmer has all these different groups, which all have their own different groups and social circles. And that's a whole lot more risk than having kind of more people on site that you can manage properly. So, you know, I think we are missing the boat on that. And I think we can do a lot if we work together as a group and look at this from all 4 perspectives, which are the farmer, yes, because I mean, they have more reason to want to reduce risk than anyone else. Obviously, the workers, we need to make sure that they're feeling comfortable and are safe. The community, the greater community, because part of the negativity we see in the community is because they deem a risk in these workers. And if we can do things that will help them feel better and reduce community risk, great. And then the other would be the Board of Health and Norfolk County. So, you know, maybe we can do some sort of work group where we can come at it from all 4 of those perspectives.
For sure. And that addressing 4 of those pillars is going to be key, so that everyone obviously A, feels heard, and B, then I mean that's a full eclipse program, so that there isn't just only one group per se winning, right? So no, Trish, I 100% agree on that. Now I don't want to jump.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I did read the story that you were speaking about earlier, and talking about, it sounds like Leamington is doing a lot of this. I know they've had earlier issues, and maybe they're a little bit behind the boat, but it looks like they're going in that direction now. Being a former committee person with OGVG, I can reach out to them over there to see what sort of best practices they have already. I mean, they're going to be more geared towards greenhouse, but it could be things that we could use here. And I think the more we can work together, maybe we get this working group going, and then we reach out to other farm groups and what are they doing in other areas, because you know, if we can have the province kind of take the lead on this and make sure everybody's going the same direction, we're going to have a whole lot safer province.
Okay. I agree. Thank you. If that would be great, because I'm sure they have their best practices, and a lot of it is going to be coming down to labor management, and the more that we can parallel over, that's beautiful. Now, I realize that item 7C is developing subcommittees, but we were sort of talking about it now. In our March meeting, there was that, in our phone call a couple of weeks ago, there was a discussion of subcommittees. But this might be the opportunity for the subcommittee that the groups are looking for, bringing in partners from all 4 of those pillars, as Trish outlined. Now, if as a board, I don't know, do we need to pass a motion or for reference and information up to council, saying that yes, you know, we're looking for support and resources to develop a subcommittee involving these four types of individuals, types of organizations? Is that something that the Ag Advisory Board could support and see benefit in? Or is there another way of going around and finding the information so that we can provide best practices and have our seat at the table for information? feel like a motion is the way so that they can support it. But is there any other alternatives? Anita, yes.
Dusty, I think that motion would be a motion like that would be very appropriate. That would make it official for council. They'd be reading our minutes, so I'd be in favor of supporting that motion or putting that motion forth.
Okay. Do we have any opposed to this motion now? Sorry, Hayden, yes?
Just, I did some typing here. I'm going to read something out here and we'll see if this is everything that somebody can support. See if this is something that everyone can support. That the Ag Advisory Board fully supports a system held with best practices related to congregate living and working arrangements, and asks that the Board of Health provides direction and resources to meet, and it could be on an appropriate basis. Maybe we want to give some clarity on that with the AAB to discuss and support implementation. Any concerns with the adoption of best practices by the agricultural industry?
Do we want, is it specifically, Anita, your hand's up?
I was just going to say, Dusty, I think Hayden's hit on some of the really key points, getting best practices and working with the health unit. And so if you need a seconder for that motion, I'd certainly do that.
Okay. If 1 second, I do want to make sure that this is considered a working group and not a subcommittee, so that we're not bound for quorum. That's an excellent point. Thank you, Councillor Martin, that we do not want we want to make sure that it is a working group, so that we can bring everybody in ourselves and then pass information fluidly through. Does everyone agree with that, or would you rather be a committee of council?
I think we need to do whatever's going to be the most efficient and quickest, because we're very, very quickly running out of time here. And I mean, this committee should be not only looking at this year, but what's happening into next year as well.
Dusty, if I may, it's Amy. I know I'm not a part of this group here, but I just sent that quick message off to Dusty. I find personally when you start to build on committees or have subcommittees, you're bound by your terms of reference. You have the requirement of a staff member to come and take the minutes. Should something happen, you're not able to meet in the county offices, you're waiting for minutes to be circulated through to council. So by calling yourself a working group, you can meet whether there are 3 of you, whether there are 5 of you. You're not relying on the county. You'd obviously always take your minutes, but you could very easily just email those minutes to council members directly. And I think that it might give you a bit more fluidity with response times and just not being bound really by kind of the administrative end from the county.
If I can direct your question to Councillor Martin and Councillor Columbus as well, what I want to make sure is, though I do appreciate the speediness that we can either meet and congregate, etc. But is this something that the health unit will sign on to be a part of if it's not an official committee of council? I know, I don't know if you can speak for them, but it's... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if Councilor Columbus
sure.
has more clarity on that one or not, but I think,
okay,
the direction.
The Ag Advisory Board is certainly a committee of council. When you get the subcommittee, it's questionable. But I think if you want things documented, it's always good to have staff involved. Like with the fact that we've stripped out the Economic Development Department, the only one we got working so hard there right now pretty well is Chris Garwood. Commend you, Chris, for all your work. And the Ag Advisory Board's kind of been floundering for the last few months. We should have been having more meetings on these important issues to move them along. And I would hope that the next meeting moves quicker. I know you're all busy, but the business at hand is really important. So, yeah, I think as long as you're having communication that's documented, as Councilor Martin mentioned, I think it's important. But it's always important to have that staff liaison because they're very important, and otherwise nothing is happening without staff involved. It seems that way.
Okay. Okay, well, if we can somewhat, if we can keep it, to get this motion through, I want to make sure that it's also the focus on, it's not just a 3-man installation that we're talking about, it's making farms safer, right? Farms safer both this year, next year, and the years after, adopting best practices, and how do we get there? So if we can keep it broad, that way council's seeing what we're wanting to do. That way the health unit can respond that, hey, no matter what it is, we'll have a person at that table. That's all I care about. That literally at the end of the day, as long as we can get a health unit representative, a county representative, and us here, and heck, a community member that isn't biased, that doesn't own a farm or a tractor, if we can get that is what I ultimately care about. So does our, I see on the message note here, Hayden, that the Ag Advisory Board fully supports the system to help with best practices related to congregate living and working arrangements. Yeah, Hayden?
So 2 things to be clear on. So Anita's got a question there. Would the working group represent the Ag Advisory Board? I want to make sure, and maybe this needs to be in the motion, that the Ag Advisory Board, it's in there, fully supports a system. So whether that be a working group or a subcommittee, I think we're leaning towards a working group at the moment because we can more expediently put things together, and we don't have to have the full group present in order to work with the county and the health unit. So to answer Anita's question, my motion is that the Ag Advisory Board fully supports this. The other thing that we need this to be about, and I don't know how we put this very clearly in there, it needs to be a working group. It has to involve work, and we have to get things done. I'm tired of talking about stuff. I'm ready to do work on this. So let's move things forwards and make the thing more safe at the farm level here.
Anita?
Yeah, so with Hayden's message there, or his motion, that the Ag Advisory fully support, instead of a system, that we could change that to a working group, or somewhere that we can add in there that what we're looking at is a working group. And then thanks for that clarification, Hayden, because sounded like we could possibly form a working group in the agricultural community, but as ag representatives of that community, I think it's important that the Ag Advisory Board be part of and officially part of that working group.
Yes, Trish?
I was just going to say, I think we should add in the motion that you have all 4 of those perspectives, because I think that's essential. No one person or one look at any problem is going to come up with the best answer. I think if you want the best overall forward direction, you should be looking at it from all perspectives and appreciating everyone else's perspective and coming up with something together that's going to work. So I think it's pretty important to have that there. And on, I think it was Mike's point on having a staff member there. I mean, one of those perspectives is the county. So whoever's going to participate in that, if they can have someone along that's going to take notes, well, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. However, so I'm committed to whether the funneling through the chair for deputation or for passing through information, then or however that works, like Councillor Columbus said, and we've all said, and Hayden and whatnot, is that it's time is of the essence, and we got to get these best practices out because more people are coming in, and I think the community and both the farming and non-farming community are looking for solutions. So, where's our motion as it stands right now? This is what Mr. Burris recommended last Wednesday. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we're adding in the 4 pillars so that council is aware what we're looking for and who we're looking to add into it, and to address both issues, short-term and long-term. So, Jacob, once you have that written out, could I get you please to read it, sir?
Yes, Dusty, I'm just finishing it up here very quickly.
Okay, thank you. And I do appreciate while Jacob does this, it's late June, it's almost 11 in the morning. Fortunately, it is a rain day, but that still doesn't mean things work and stop. So I do appreciate everyone's time here. Normally we don't meet obviously this late in the season, but I do appreciate it. We'll try to wrap this up here soon.
I have a little something for you.
Okay.
Okay, the Agriculture Advisory Board fully supports a working group to help with best practices related to congregate living and working arrangements, and asks that the Board of Health provides direction and resources with members of the AAB to discuss and support implementation and any concerns with the adoption of best practices by the agriculture industry. This group will primarily focus on both short and long-term interests, such as safety on the farm. It will feature a county staff member and report back to AAB with information following meetings. Need anything else?
Well, can we say county staff member and as well a member of the health unit?
And a member of the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit. Okay, so it will feature county staff and a member of the HNHU and report back to the AAB with information following meetings.
Okay. As it stands right now, do we have any opposed to this? Okay. Just for the sake of clarity, is this a board that, once we have all the answers and figured out COVID and COVID's done, is this board dissolved, or is this one that continues into indefinite future?
It was my understanding that this will be a board that continues.
Okay.
Sorry, Dusty, if I jump in here, that's the benefit of a working group. You don't have a stop date in any form of terms or reference, so it's pretty fluid. You could really decide on the fly there.
Okay. Yeah, because what I don't want to see is more boards that meet unnecessarily, but because I also don't want to lose the merit of the Ag Advisory Board. Once we get this tackle and best practices solved, and we got that, I'd like to personally. I can't sit in any more boards, so and I know a lot of you can't either. But this is a pressing issue, so it's time is of the essence. I guess that's something we can figure out after if council adopts it, what that looks like for termination after 1 or 2 years or something like that, if that's even possible. Because what ultimately, okay, so before I continue, okay, is there any opposed to this motion and this new subcommittee? Seeing none, can I get a mover? Trish, thank you.
Yeah, technically, Dusty, we've already had Hayden move it, and then I believe Trish or Anita. I've already recorded that. Trish or Anita has, supported by Trish.
Thank you. I never lied, or I never promised to be a good chair when it comes to regulations stuff. So I apologize.
No problem.
Okay. The other thing too that I want to discuss is, at a later date that it has been continually apparent, is that the health unit, when programs roll out directly affecting the agriculture industry, how do we make sure that the Ag Advisory Board has a seat at the table? Is that something we want to address now or after this? I think now the subcommittee is going to help that, but making sure that we always have a seat at the table, especially when policies come out that affect us directly. If we can have this conversation today or later, totally up to you guys. This was raised by Hayden. He sent through that maybe a discussion point. What are your thoughts, Hayden?
Yeah, no, I want to definitely have a discussion on that. I think we've seen what's come up in the news these days, and I think if we look at the onset here, we had the 3-person per bunkhouse ruling. We had the migrant worker identification cards. Now they're kind of the migrant worker identification cards is kind of a taboo thing here, and we don't like to talk about it. I don't particularly like to talk about it. But I think it brings up a very good point that we've got to have involvement and communication on this going into it. Policies related to policies and regulations that are developed for agriculture. I think we need to get out in front of some of this stuff and just have it run by us, at least for comment. I'm not saying that we're going to control the process in any way, shape, or form, but I think we've got a really good functioning Ag Advisory Board here. And I don't think it's been properly utilized here in the last 6 months, at least, to be able to put us in a position here where we've really been able to give valued input on situations. And yeah, I just, as an Ag Advisory Board, I think we need to be better utilized.
Trish?
I agree. I've been on this board for over 10 years, and that's always been the way it's been run, that anything happening in the county that relates to agriculture is ran through the board first for comment, because it's important to get that perspective. And that doesn't seem to have happened in the last few months. So I think it's a missed opportunity that we could have did better as a whole.
Okay.
And maybe it's just that we've had a lot of change in staffing and council, and no one quite knows where things are at, but I think we should go back to that direction.
Absolutely. If I could put either of the councillors in the hot seat there, is this something that this new council is looking into doing, or is it how can we either be better, or is it worse time, is it more so that we're pushing water? Is this something that this council is looking for if we continually try to promote communication?
Well, anytime you get good or better communication is really important, and I agree. The ball was dropped when the 3-person per bunkhouse rule came out without input from the agriculture community. Perhaps there might have been a change, and we would have had a more smoother transition to support our agriculture migrant worker program. But I think it's just the fact that we've lost a lot of staff in the Economic Development Department, and the Ag Advisory Board relied really heavily on that. Agriculture is our #1 prime industry in Norfolk, and we lost that communication with the department, and I think we have to rebuild it. And I know Mr. Garwood's listening, and I know he's always been thinking about it and contributing the best he can.
From my perspective, I see a lot of gaps just through the pandemic aspect of things, because I think the Board of Health feels the same way, and the common denominator here is the information's coming out of the health unit, which really operates in its own kind of entity compared to what the Corporation of Norfolk does. So I would agree that, yeah, certainly both the Board of Health and the Ag Advisory Committee should have been consulted and utilized for exactly what you're brought together to do better. But I think that there's been a disconnect through the health unit to the boards respectively. So I agree, communication should be much better. But I don't know, being new to council, I don't know what to compare it to. I don't know how it worked prior. I'd be interested to know what the system was and how we get that back on track for, a more scheduled, regular dialogue with all parties.
Yeah, Hayden?
Yeah, so appreciate both the councillors' position there on that, and I realize that we're sitting here today. It's not necessarily either one of your decisions to have had things rolled out the way that they've rolled out here. So I want to make sure that that's clear to everybody, and I don't think there's anybody that has an opposing opinion here on that. I believe I'm speaking on behalf of everybody when I say that. Thank you very much for your continued effort to request that we get changes and that we are involved as an agricultural community. The other thing that I want to make sure of as well, we don't say thank you enough, and we got Chris Garwood, I think, still on here. Yep, Chris is still there. I just want to make sure that Chris understands we're talking about staff resources here and the fact that things haven't been working properly. And I want to make sure that there's an understanding or an expectation that that Chris understands that this is all on his shoulders, but we don't necessarily want to come across or come down on you, Chris. We realize that you've been put in a position here where you're really trying to do the best with the resources that you have available. So I want to make sure that you're appreciated in this whole situation as well when we're having this discussion.
Thank you very much. And just to provide a bit of update, you would have seen that the general manager for planning and development was announced last week, will be in place very soon. And also that we will be going to market to advertise for another position in economic development soon as the general manager is seated. One of his first order of business will be to restaff our look at the resources in tourism and economic development. So in short order, I'm expecting that there will be a lot of changes.
Okay. Yeah, for what's already said, and I continue to reiterate that, I appreciate everyone on this board and both councillors for continually going to bat for us here, both on and off the camera, and everyone doing the extra legwork outside. One thing I do want to understand better is when can this board, this new foreign subcommittee, meet? What's the timeline for, like, do we need council's approval for this? When is council going to be seeing this? Because there's best practices that, like Trish is thankfully going to be speaking out to OGVG and trying to see what their practices are coming through that we can start adding in and setting up the flagpole. Anita?
Yeah, Dusty, it's a little after 11 o'clock, and I know we were scheduled to be 9 to 11. I do have staff coming in now. I've got to get back to work. I know that a number of people have dropped off the chat already, and so I don't believe we had quorum, so I'm not sure if there's anything on the agenda yet that would require approval on a motion, but I can stay for another couple of minutes if you think there's something that we might have to have a vote on, but otherwise I would sign off and head back to work.
No, I appreciate it. Sounds like we have our two motions coming through. I am just looking for some understanding as to when this board would be meeting. Sorry, the subcommittee would be meeting. Does anybody have clarification on that? Or either Council Hayden?
Sorry, can we just make sure that the council is, in order for this to happen and a policy to be drawn, that agriculture is involved in the consultation process prior to any policy that's implemented? Could we get a comment on that? How do we effectively communicate that as an ag advisory board? Just in case there's a motion needed before Anita drops off there.
Yeah, is that that seems to be like a motion.
Right, maybe it should be in the form of a motion, and then that way it's documented. And Mr. Burgess or Mr. Garwood will obviously be aware of it, and Mr. Burgess can take it and move forward with it.
Could I read what I've got now then? I typed up that the Ag Advisory Board asks Council to introduce policy that requires consultation through their Ag Advisory Board to take place prior to implementation related to any policy or regulation that affects their agricultural partners, and further that the Ag Advisory Board be able to delegate a working group formed by its members for this consultation and report back to the Ag Advisory Board. Now, maybe that second part's not necessary, but we're talking about working groups here. Maybe it just needs to be that there's a policy that we come and consider the comments of the Ag Advisory Board prior to us introducing policy.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that addresses the issue at hand. Yes.
Okay.
Perhaps Councillor Martin has a comment.
No comment. I think it's good. My only suggestion when you go back to discussing your working group is maybe you put together a bit of a timeline with some deliverables you hope to execute on, and then that can be shared with Councillor Columbus, and he's always keen to advocate for whatever you're doing anyway, so he would be able to update council with, in the next month this working group plans to do such and such, and that way we're not waiting on minutes to come forward. He could follow a bit of a timeline and just make sure it's coming to the council table. But otherwise, as for wording of the motion, I think that's suitable.
Okay, that's great. That's a good point. Yeah, so before we thank you, Anita, I do appreciate it. And I do believe that this is key in establishing that standard. So thank you, Hayden. But I, again, do not speak for the board. Do we have any opposed this motion that on the right, Ag Advisory Board ask council to introduce policy requires consultation? Does anyone have any opposing views on this?
Dusty, I just want to comment. Jason, would you be able to officially confirm that we do have quorum yet?
Jacob.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have enough, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Jacob, I do believe that I have voting rights too. Are you counting me in?
Yeah, I am. Yes, so I've got Dusty, Hayden, Councillor Columbus, Anita, and Trish, and that's it.
We should be good then. 6. I'm counting 6.
You've got 6. Yeah.
We should be good then, I believe.
Okay. Yep, thank you. I appreciate that procedure. So are we, with those that are here, do we have any opposed? Seeing none.
Sorry, this is Amy. Can I just having a quick thought that might be critical in the language of the motion. So the Ag Advisory Board is a committee of council. The gap is that we're not communicating with the health unit. I don't know if this might need more research, but I almost wonder if you should change the language and say a working group that is a committee or a working group to the Board of Health. Like specify that your direct line is to the Board of Health here. That's where the communication lag is. Like under the legislation, we work through the Municipal Act, and your committee is a subcommittee of council. But there is no committee or subcommittee or working group to the Board of Health. I wonder if you should specify in your language. We don't necessarily need it to come to council, right? We need it to go to the Board of Health, Mike?
You could also clarify that by saying Norfolk County Council and or the Board of Health. Right?
Yeah. That's just where the communication gap is. It's to the Board of Health, and the Board of Health doesn't play by the Municipal Act rules. So if council adopts whatever motions this working group puts together, I don't know if it's not going to bridge any gaps between the health unit. It's neither here nor there.
You're correct, Amy.
Yeah.
So some
Okay,
kind
so
of
what's the
language
best
that
way?
your committee, that your Ag Advisory Board, your working group will send minutes to the Ag Advisory Board, which will report directly in, or wants to, kind of change your structure to be a committee of council and the Board of Health. That might be a whole other motion for another day. We might have to do some legwork on.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the motion as well represents the fact that this isn't just policy related to the Board of Health or what comes down from the health unit, that it's any policy that affects agriculture. I think we should be utilizing this board.
Yeah.
So how does council interact with the Board of Health?
We just go in as Board of Health members, not as council members, and everything we do, you make decisions through the lens of health and safety. You try to take all the politics out of the issues, and so that's why we rely heavily on information that comes from Shanker or Marlene or whomever. But technically, they're two separate entities.
So how do we bridge? Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. How do we bridge the gap then?
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe, I think, so if we could get your information, your working group, under whatever the equivalent is to whatever the equivalent is of the municipal act for the health sector. Like if we specifically include that language, maybe there's some legal obligation that they will need to report to you. So I'm just not sure what that language looks like specifically. I might have to do a bit more research on what act the Board of Health is bound by. And then maybe what we do is amend the terms of reference for the Ag Committee at large to not only be a committee of council, but to also be a committee of the Board of Health.
Can I make a suggestion on the motion? And maybe this resolves it for now and gets us underway. And then maybe what we can do is, Amy, maybe that's a good thing for you to follow up later on, but that the Ag Advisory Board asks Council to introduce a policy that requires consultation through the Ag Advisory Board, and further that the request is made to do the same at the Board of Health for matters related to the health unit and their staff. Something along those lines. Does that resolve what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I would think that would be suitable. And then, in the back burner, we'll look at how to maybe expand the Ag Advisory Board's terms of references to be more holistic and include health as well.
It would be a good start, that's for sure.
Cool.
I'd like to hear. Okay. Okay, so I want to make sure everything's clear and kosher to be voting on to make sure that this is the correct motion. Again, I hate rushing motions, but Jacob, could you please recite out the motion as is?
The motion on the floor from Hayden is that the Agriculture Advisory Board asks Council to introduce policy that requires a consultation through the AAB and Board of Health to take place prior to the implementation related to any policy or regulation that affects their agriculture partners, and further that the AAB be able to delegate a working group formed by its members for this consultation and to report back to the AAB.
Perfect.
I think just to make sure that the wording's correct there, Dusty, consultation, so that the Ag Advisory Board asks Council to introduce policy that requires consultation through their Ag Advisory Board, and additionally asks for the same to take place for the Board of Health on any policy through their health unit for implementation related to any policy or regulation. So can you fit the, just that we're asking that the Board of Health adopts the same standard? I guess is what we're trying to put in there, not necessarily that we're asking for the Board of Health
Okay,
to
so
be provided with a consultation. Does
sure.
that make sense?
So we'll say AAB asks council to introduce policy that requires a consultation through the AAB, and additionally, and additionally the same to take place at the Board of Health prior to the implementation related to any policy.
Got it. Or regulation. Yeah, that's great.
It's still not sounding right to me, and I think maybe we need to add it in at the top, so that the Ag Advisory Board asks council and the Board of Health to introduce policy that requires consultation through. Does that make sense? Maybe Mike or Amy can jump in and comment on that. That the Ag Advisory Board asks council and the Board of Health to introduce policy that requires.
Yeah, I personally think that covers it. The intent is certainly in the motion.
Do you want me to read it over to you again, Hayden, just to make sure it works?
Yeah, go ahead.
That the AAB asks council and the Board of Health to introduce policy that requires a consultation from AAB to take place prior to the implementation related to any policy or regulation that affects their agricultural partners, and further. That the AAB be able to delegate a working group formed by its members for this consultation and report back to the AAB.
Works for me.
I think it's good.
Okay. Would anybody like to second that then?
Anita, I second that.
Okay, on to your vote, Dusty.
Okay, so do we have any opposed? Thank you for seconding that. Hayden, thank you for putting that to the table. Fantastic. The moved motion for better communication and for introducing policy requires consultation is passed. So thank you kindly for that. I'm looking forward to that one coming through because, yeah, I think that would have had our voices heard. So I'm glad that's one of the steps that I'm interested to see how that's perceived on the council floor. Okay, so we will quickly, anything more for communications, just so I can keep things legit? Now, technically, we have lost quorum. So I think on that note, we have to defer. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. Well, that's it is what it is. I thank everyone for staying on this long. We did have terms of reference, the resource document, and developing of the subcommittees, but we already talked about item C. Terms of reference and the resource document we can talk about at a later date. And then the social media account was for the TDAB agenda. So that's clear there. Jacob, if we could send out, well, we can talk amongst ourselves through the proper channel to discuss next meeting. When is the next council meeting, and when will these motions be hitting the floor? I guess that'll really determine the readiness of the AAB. Is July 14th the next council meeting?
I'm just looking that up for you now, Dusty.
Okay.
We've got an emergency council meeting next Tuesday, but the minutes don't come that quickly unless Jacob's going to be a minute wizard. And then typically it would be, I think, the 21st of July should be the next council, I believe.
Okay. All right. So, well, by then we will kind of jump the gun because I know this is also direction that's coming down informally through Jason Burgess and others. That this is what the health unit and that senior leadership is looking for. So Trish, myself, Hayden, and other members will, if we can work together to see what the OGVG's best practices are. If there's any more best practices coming out of the OFDGA, any of the individual commodity groups, as well as obviously what came through down the pipeline today, asking for Is that from farms? Which there's an update that just came out just recently. Anyways, we'll keep working on best practices so that this board, when it comes together, we'll hit the ground running, and we'll work with the timetables as they seem set. Is there anything else for those that are still left here?
Hey, Dusty, just confirming the next regular council meeting is indeed July 21st.
21st? Okay, good deal. Cool, thank you. Beautiful. Well, that was a fast 2.5 hours. Thank you everyone for putting the legwork in pre this meeting and continually. And so we'll go for Councillor. Thank you for joining, Councillor Martin. Thank you for joining us here today. Jacob, excellent work. Looking forward to working with you. And I'm sure this conversation continues, but it is some great motions, and I'm happy to see the thank you for you guys putting in. I'm happy to see Ag forward on the agenda coming through for council.
So Dusty, we'll just play it by ear
Thanks,
on
everyone.
when you'd like to meet next.
We'll play it by ear.
Okay.
We can send out. Typically, we don't meet in July nor August, but I mean, considering it won't be till the 21st, or we get this, there might be some informal stuff that's happened.
Okay.
To build best practices that we can maybe send through. If we can get a Survey Monkey to see if we can even get quorum come July, but that'll have to see what that looks like. Trish, Hayden, do you think we could? It's worthwhile.
We had a lot to discuss about today. I'd really like to keep on top of the communication and have official meetings if we can, and if everybody else is responsive to that. I think that would be best, just being as the times that we're in and that we've got a lot of things that are changing ongoing. So.
Okay, sounds good. Then we'll go on that, and we'll try to get one maybe early July. So
okay.
that'll give us some time to get some best practices put together. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.